Have you ever questioned whether ancient prophecies could actually shape the course of entire empires? Imagine a young prisoner in Babylon receiving visions so precise they would shake kings and foretell the rise and fall of world powers. Daniel, a name echoing across centuries, a story woven with dreams and lions, and a God who writes history before it happens. What if I told you that hidden within the mysterious visions of Daniel are secrets that predicted global events down to the very year? For centuries, scholars and skeptics have battled over whether these predictions are coincidence or undeniable proof of the divine. How can a prophecy speak with razor-sharp accuracy about kings who weren't even born yet? And what if those same prophecies still speak into our world today, whispering warnings and hope across the ages? Today, you'll discover why Daniel's visions have baffled historians, and how understanding these truths could radically shift your perception of fate, faith, and the future. Few realize the depth of what was revealed between the feast and the furnace. Are you ready to peer behind the veil, to witness the impossible unfold? Keep watching, because what's hidden in Daniel might just change what you believe is possible. Imagine the city of Jerusalem, its golden stones shimmering in the late afternoon sun. Suddenly, a distant rumble breaks the peace. The year is 605 BC. Nebuchadnezzar's army, clad in armor that gleams like hammered bronze, storms the gates. The sun sets not just on a city, but on an entire era. In that chaos, a handful of young men, noble, learned, trembling, are dragged away, exiles to a world infinitely stranger than their wildest fears. Babylon. Among them, a teenager named Daniel. Why does this detail matter? It is here, in the ashes of defeat and loss, under the burning eyes of an enemy king, that the foundation of Daniel's prophecies is laid. Many believe power comes from victorious armies, but the profound truth is often born in suffering. Daniel, ripped from everything familiar, faces a world obsessed with its own gods, its own grandeur. Yet out of this darkness, the glimmer of something timeless begins to emerge, a story that will shape the fate of empires. You might be wondering, how could an exile become the bearer of secrets that even Babylon's wisest men could not unravel? The surprise lies in Daniel's unwavering devotion. While others bowed before the golden idol, Daniel knelt in secret 3 times a day, facing Jerusalem, his heart aligned with a greater king. The book of Daniel opens as a testimony of spiritual resistance, a defiant light refusing to flicker out in a city drunk on power. But let's pause and step deeper into this history. Babylon at the time was more than a city. It was the beating heart of the world. Towering ziggurats pierced the heavens, the hanging gardens unfurled like green rivers in the desert. Dazzling ambassadors whispered that Babylon was eternal. In the royal court, Daniel and his friends are forced to accept new names: Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, each one erasing a bit of their Hebrew identity, a calculated move to make them forget their past, their faith, their God. And yet the true God, a God who sees the humble in exile, had already decided to reveal mysteries that would outlast Babylon itself. What happened next changed everything. Nebuchadnezzar, mighty and invincible, is haunted by dreams that steal his sleep and unravel his confidence. As a viewer, picture the mightiest man in the world trembling at night, desperate for answers. But none of his magicians, the soothsayers and stargazers, can tell him what he dreamed. The tension builds, empire and prophecy, wisdom and the divine, all colliding in one sleepless night. At this moment, Daniel steps forward, a slave in a foreign court, with everything to lose, but carrying a secret the kingdom cannot live without. He asks for time, not to consult books, but to pray. Imagine the silence in his chamber as Daniel pours out his heart to heaven, his friends joining in, the city outside indifferent to the battle raging in one quiet room. The Bible records, during the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Daniel 2:19. Can you feel the electricity in that moment? From a humble plea to a heaven-shaking answer, history hangs in the balance. This shows us something profound about the biblical foundation of prophecy. True revelation comes not from power, but from devotion, not from status, but from surrender. Daniel's story teaches us that God speaks with astounding clarity to those who still seek him, even in enemy territory. Step back and sense the scale. Daniel's first prophecy doesn't just offer vague wisdom, it unmasks the hidden agenda of destiny itself. As Daniel stands before Nebuchadnezzar, he declares, "There is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries." Daniel 2:28. These aren't the words of a terrified captive, but of someone who knows that history bends to the voice of the divine. Daniel reveals the king's forgotten dream, a statue made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay, each layer a cryptic code to the rise and fall of empires not yet born. But here's where the suspense intensifies. How could Daniel have known the future? Many claim the book of Daniel is merely clever literature, written after the fact. But the historical context is unyielding. Archaeological findings confirm Babylon's grandeur, the regime changes, the impossible odds faced by exiles like Daniel. Moreover, the book's earliest manuscripts can be traced back centuries before these events transpired, shattering the notion that its prophecies were fabricated in hindsight. Imagine the disbelief in the royal court, the silent awe as Daniel finishes speaking and the king falls on his face. Not only are Daniel and his friends spared, they are elevated, becoming counselors in a court that had planned their execution hours earlier. The most powerful king on earth now admits, truly, your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries. Daniel 2:47. In this moment, prophecy not only saves lives, it topples the pride of an empire. But this raises an even deeper question. Why would God choose to reveal world-shaking secrets to an exile, to someone seemingly forgotten by history? What's hidden here is a blueprint, repeating throughout Scripture. God chooses the humble, the overlooked, and the oppressed to be the bearers of his most extraordinary revelations. Let's feel the weight of this truth. Daniel is not a solitary prodigy. He is every person who has ever asked, "Does my suffering matter? Will God speak to me even here?" The book of Daniel insists, yes, in the ruins, in the foreign land, in sleepless nights, he still speaks, and what he reveals can shake kingdoms from the inside out. To truly appreciate Daniel's prophecies, you must see them as more than predictions. They are a collision between heaven and history, a living promise that God's word outlasts empires and shapes the course of civilization itself. Every vision Daniel receives is woven with real places, real kings, real moments, each tethered to the palpable sensory reality of Babylon and the longing for Jerusalem. Visualize Daniel, still young, navigating the dazzling, threatening corridors of the most formidable empire on earth. Smell the incense of pagan rituals filling the palace air. Hear the distant chants in foreign tongues. Feel the stone-cold dread of a city that doesn't know the God of Abraham. Yet, in all this foreignness, the God of Israel is not silent. He reveals, he orchestrates, and he exalts those who trust him in the shadows. This is not merely history. It's the overture of a cosmic drama. The exile that seemed like defeat becomes the stage for destiny. Babylon thought it had conquered Jerusalem. But in truth, Jerusalem's God had infiltrated the heart of Babylon. What you're about to discover in the next part will completely change your perspective. not just on prophecy, but on how the spiritual realm invades daily reality. Daniel's visions wouldn't just predict kingdoms, they would redefine the meaning of faith, destiny, and hope in ways that still echo today. The mystery deepens. What spiritual insights are hidden within these ancient prophecies? And what can they reveal about the invisible battle shaping our world right now? Don't miss what comes next. What if every trembling moment in Daniel's life wasn't just a historical episode, but a clue to invisible currents shaping our reality? As we step into the spiritual heart of Daniel's prophecies, imagine yourself standing beside him in the lion's den, surrounded not just by ravenous beasts, but by ruthless spiritual forces intent on silencing any divine revelation. In Babylon, every act, every prayer, every refusal to bow is infused with supernatural consequence. Daniel's story isn't about surviving exile, it's about the collision of two unseen kingdoms. But you might be wondering, what truly makes Daniel's visions different from the countless mystical writings of ancient times? Many believe prophecy is little more than cryptic poetry. The profound truth is much more unsettling. Daniel's prophecies invert the logic of earthly power and reveal a narrative invisible to the eyes of emperors. Each time Daniel is granted a vision, he enters a spiritual battlefield where the stakes are the destinies of nations, the rise and fall of leaders, and even the spiritual fate of the world. Let's look at Nebuchadnezzar's dream, not just as a forecast of kingdom after kingdom, but as a window into the way God sees history. Those shining metals, the gold, the silver, the bronze, the iron, the clay, aren't just materials. They are metaphors pulsing with spiritual significance. From the perspective of heaven, empires are weights and measures, temporary and fleeting, shimmering for a moment and then crumbling into dust. Yet what stands at the end? Not a new empire, but a stone cut out without hands, which struck the image. Daniel 2:34. Here, the most world-changing kingdom isn't forged by human ambition, but by the intervention of the divine, subtle, unstoppable, eternal. You might feel a chill at these words, sensing that Daniel's visions carry more than information. They are a call to awaken to spiritual reality. Picture the king's statue shattering into dust, swept away by the wind. The kingdoms of this world rise in glory, only to vanish in silence. This image drills a single piercing truth into the human soul. Everything built apart from God is passing. Only what is anchored in the God of heaven endures. But as you listen, a deeper question emerges. If God controls the sweep of history, where does human choice fit in? Many people quietly wonder whether free will means anything in light of such overwhelming prophecy. The secret inside Daniel is that God's sovereignty isn't fatalism. The Bible shows God working through the prayers, decisions, and faithfulness of his people. Daniel does not simply watch passively. His seeking, fasting, and boldness are themselves catalysts for revelation. History is shaped not only by conquest, but by the hidden acts of devotion in exile. Even the most powerful visions are given in response to tender, trembling prayers. Let's slow down and peer into another mystery. Daniel's night visions, beasts rising from the chaotic sea, horns sprouting and falling, a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. Daniel 7:13. Images both terrifying and beautiful. You might feel your heart beat faster as you imagine these scenes pulsing with supernatural light. What do they mean? Some see them as locked codes, and yet the key is spiritual. The beasts are not simply future kings, they are archetypes, the animal rage of empire, the chaos of rebellion against God, the endless human dream to rule without accountability. Yet set over against this turbulence is the image of one like a son of man. Daniel watches in awe as this figure, human yet somehow divine, is crowned with dominion and glory and a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. Daniel 7:14. Can you feel the wonder? This is not merely a prediction. It is the unveiling of the Messiah, the bridge between suffering humanity and the victorious eternal King. In this vision, Daniel witnesses the deepest longing of every human heart, the hope that someone, somehow, will set all things right. This shows us something profound about the theology of Daniel's prophecies. God is not just foretelling the rise and fall of tyrants. He is lighting a path toward true, everlasting kingship, not built on violence, but on redemptive authority. In Daniel, heaven's plans break through earth's chaos, and suffering is never wasted. Daniel's own survival, fires that do not burn, lions whose mouths do not open, becomes a living metaphor. Even as darkness grows deeper, God's presence is more real, more immediate. Let yourself imagine the contrasts Daniel must have felt. On one hand, Babylon's relentless feasts and statues, its self-glorification. On the other, Daniel's fragile daily prayers, a whisper against a storm. Many believe that the world is shaped by the loud, the powerful, the certain. But Daniel's life radiates the opposite. The world is shaped by those who find God in secret, who dare to obey, even at the edge of the furnace. There is tension here, because the visions Daniel receives are not always comforting. At times, after a revelation, Daniel collapses, overcome and sick for days. Daniel 8:27. The sight of evil, unchecked for centuries, shakes him to his core. Yet in his distress, an angel assures him, the vision is true, but it refers to many days from now. Sometimes God's timing stretches beyond our lifetime, requiring trust, patience, heartbreak. It would be easier if prophecy made everything simple. Instead, it invites faith that grows strongest in the dark. You might be wondering, why does God reveal such terrifying images to Daniel? The answer slips quietly between the lines. God shares the future with the faithful not to create fear, but to plant hope in the midst of uncertainty. Prophecy is the candle burning in a world haunted by night, the promise that, however long the chaos rages, God remembers, God reigns, God wins. Let's draw out another surprising spiritual insight. Daniel's prayers shape the very course of events in heaven. Can you imagine, as he fasts and mourns for his people, an angel is dispatched, but is delayed 21 days by the prince of Persia? Daniel 10:13. Here, the veil is pulled back, revealing spiritual warfare that rages far above political plots. The message is unmistakable. Your prayers matter more than you know. What looks like delay or silence in the physical world is often a sign of seismic battles being waged in the spiritual realm. God invites us into these battles, not as bystanders, but as participants whose faith moves the unseen. This brings us to a breathtaking application. Daniel's visions ask us not only to interpret history, but to live spiritually awake in the present. Every act of faith, every confession, every moment of trust in exile echoes in eternity. Daniel's courage is not antique, it is a template for us. When you kneel against the tide, you declare that God, not circumstance, writes your story. Consider one final paradox. The very prophecies that reveal the doom of nations also announce unimaginable hope. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, forever and ever. Daniel 7:18. Daniel witnesses unspeakable chaos, but always with the promise that the faithful will reign with God in the end. This is the heartbeat of biblical prophecy. It's not just a coded message about distant times, but a declaration that this world is not abandoned. God's justice will not be thwarted. his promises thread through time, gleaming like gold in the dark. Daniel shows us that even when emperors rise and fall, there is a deeper rhythm, a spiritual tempo set by God, whom no power can silence. What does this mean for us? Imagine feeling the full gravity of this truth. Your faith, though quiet and unseen, is part of an epic struggle that shakes principalities and powers. Your choices echo in places you cannot yet see. But this raises a question even more urgent. How can these spiritual insights from Daniel become reality in our complicated modern lives? The visions are ancient, but their impact is burning and new. In the next part, you'll witness how Daniel's prophecies have invaded real history, affecting kings, nations, and even our personal stories in ways you would never expect. What happens when prophecy steps out of Scripture and into our world? The answer will challenge everything you thought you knew. Don't look away now. Close your eyes and imagine the thunder of marching armies, the trembling of cities, the flash of new banners rising above ancient ruins. Across the centuries since Daniel's visions, history has not been docked in calm waters. And yet, if you listen closely, a subtle thread connects Babylon's palaces to today's crumbling kingdoms, to our own turbulent times. The Book of Daniel is not a museum relic. It is a map that continues to chart the shifting landscapes of modern life and global power even now. Many believe that prophecy is a thing locked in the distant past, but the profound truth is this: Daniel's predictions have unfolded with spine-chilling accuracy right through the pages of our shared history, and they echo with urgent meaning for us today. Let's bring those ancient words into the electric present and see how Daniel's visions invade the real world. You might be wondering, as you walk through city streets lined with dazzling lights or scroll through global headlines, how could ancient dreams possibly speak to the chaos I see today? The story begins, as it always does, with a statue. A dazzling composite, shining and monstrous. Daniel speaks, "You, O king, are the king of kings. You are the head of gold." Daniel 2:37-38. The head, Babylon itself, unmatched in splendor, obsessed with its own glory. And yet, historically, that empire would pass. No power, not even Babylon's, escapes the relentless grip of time. But what happened next changed everything. Not long after Daniel interpreted the dream, Babylon was conquered, seemingly overnight, by the Medo-Persians. In a single night of feasting and mockery, as the book of Daniel says, the writing was on the wall. Archaeologists have uncovered the walls of Babylon and records describing the river diverted by Cyrus, which allowed his armies to storm the city. Here, before any of us drew breath, the shimmering head of gold was brought low, just as Daniel had seen. The succession continued. The Medo-Persian Empire, represented by the statue's silver chest and arms, endured for 2 centuries before falling to another force, Greece, under a young, unstoppable Alexander the Great. Daniel's prophecy, the kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth, Daniel 2:39, unfolded with shocking precision. Alexander swept through the ancient world at lightning speed, carving Greek culture onto the map of civilization, coins, architecture, language, history itself stamped with Daniel's vision. Yet even Alexander's empire, as dazzling as it was, fractured at his death, splintered into 4 unstable kingdoms. Daniel had seen it. The great horn was broken, and 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Daniel 8:8. What if I told you that historians, sifting through the ashes of fallen cities, found Daniel's metaphor perfectly mirrored in the events of 323 BC, when Alexander's generals carved up the world like scavengers? The relentless march continued. Rome, The legs of iron, crushing and unyielding, would stamp its feet across history for centuries. Daniel wrote of a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, for iron breaks and shatters all things. Daniel 2:40. The Roman Empire's legacy is carved into our language, our law, our architecture, our collective memory. And yet, Daniel's vision saw even further. Feet of iron mixed with clay, a realm both powerful and fatally divided. Rome broke into eastern and western halves, never fully reuniting, and Europe would fracture, reform, expand, and never again forge a world empire of the same iron strength. Take a breath and feel the weight of these connections. This is no vague fortune-telling. This is history itself, prophesied long before Caesar ever drew his first breath. And the story doesn't stop with parchment pages or dusty ruins. Think of the world wars and shifting alliances of the last century. Think of the constant elusive search for a singular world government, a union of strength and weakness, iron and clay, always promised but never achieved. The European Union, the United Nations, bold experiments in unity. They rise, they tremble, they reveal again the mystery Daniel unlocked. Human power always fractures on the anvil of pride and difference. But is this all just ancient insight stretched thin across the present, or does Daniel's vision pierce even deeper? Imagine, in your own life, the statues you build, idols of ambition, strength, or security. Many believe the safest life is built from the strongest metal. The incredible truth is that any foundation apart from the stone cut without hands is dust in waiting. Pause for a moment, feel the implications. If global empires armed with armies, genius and gold collapse on the prophecies of a praying exile, what about the kingdoms we construct inside ourselves? Daniel's message is timeless. It whispers, even now, that nothing built in pride, no relationship, career, nation or tower, outlasts the hand of the divine. Let's step into the world stage today. Borders flare, powers rise, alliances form and shatter. Prophetic themes echo through the news. A world hungry for security, desperate for unity, anxious about the future. Daniel's images, the beastly empires, the divided clay, the coming kingdom, remain a backdrop to every legislative chamber and diplomatic table. Prophecy isn't shackled to history, it's alive. Its pulse can be felt in the uncertainty, shadowing our days. You might be asking, does this really touch our lived experience? Consider how faith under pressure shapes the modern world. In governments still hostile to prayer, in boardrooms and university classrooms where belief is seen as weakness, Daniel's courage resounds in every whisper of conscience. The lines between Babylon and Jerusalem are not just ancient. They run through our very public squares and private hearts. Real-world examples blossom everywhere you look. During the darkest days of the Cold War, Christians smuggled Bibles through iron barriers, risking everything to keep the word alive in lands where faith meant death. Think of civil rights leaders inspired by the dream of justice, cut not by hands, who knelt in prayer before marching into danger. Consider the millions worldwide who find their hope not in fleeting governments or economic forecasts, but in the still sure promises Daniel saw in vision. This shows us something profound. Prophecy is not speculation, it's a lens through which to view everything, from sweeping world events to the tiniest tremors in your family or career. It invites us to read history, not just what happened, but who is at work behind the scenes. It dares us to hope that no matter the chaos, a divine purpose persists, both globally and intimately. Picture yourself among today's Daniels, individuals who stand, often alone, for truth or justice or compassion, whose faith quietly shapes the world around them. In the age of cynicism and division, to believe in the God who changes times and seasons, removes kings and establishes kings, Daniel 2:21, is an act of gentle rebellion. It's a seed planted in ground most would call hopeless, a declaration that the unseen kingdom, the stone cut without, hands will soon fill the earth. Let's bring it closer to home. Maybe you sense your own life is swept up in currents you can't control. Economic hardship, political turmoil, shifting culture and values. Daniel's message is not just about ancient kings or global headlines. It's about the cracks in your own foundation. It's about leaning into the one whose kingdom cannot be shaken, whose timing cannot be hurried or hindered. The world will keep churning. Statues rising, falling, ground shifting beneath our feet. But the most important choice is not how to read the headlines. It's where to kneel, whose kingdom you trust, whose vision guides your destiny. This too is Daniel's prophecy come true, that in every age there are some who live by the pulse of heaven, even when Babylon crowds all around. But this brings us to a question far more intimate and urgent. If prophecy's fulfillment is so clear in the sweep of history and so alive in the tides of today, what does that tell us about the future? Could Daniel's ancient visions hold keys not only to the past and present, but to challenges that lie ahead in your life and in the destiny of the world? In the next part, we will press farther into the prophetic heart of Daniel's message, where future possibilities and the ultimate showdown between kingdoms are unveiled. What you're about to discover might not only challenge your beliefs, it could transform your understanding of what's coming next. Don't miss where the mystery leads. Imagine standing at the edge of time, peering into a swirling horizon where history bows before the unknown. Daniel's prophecies don't end with crumbled empires and fulfilled visions. They sweep us toward a future where the stakes rise higher, the mysteries grow deeper, and the voice of God still echoes in the silence between epochs. If the past revealed in Daniel's words has unfolded with jaw-dropping precision, what about the future he points us toward? What if the final act of his visions, still outstretched before us, holds the key to Earth's ultimate destiny and your personal hope? Many believe prophecy is only a backward glance, comfort for those obsessed with the past. But the profound truth is this: Daniel's revelations propel us forward, their momentum gathering speed with every passing decade. As the kingdoms through which the statue marched vanish into dust, a new question crackles in the air. What was that stone cut without hands, and when will it shatter the foundations of every human power for good? Picture the image. A supernatural stone strikes the statue at its feet, crushing every empire, gold, silver, bronze, iron, clay, to powder that the wind sweeps away. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Daniel 2:35. Can you feel the tremor? This isn't evolution or gradual progress. This is sudden, divine intervention. An act of God so overwhelming, all human attempts at mastery collapse in awe. You might be wondering, what is this stone? Who or what can be so disruptive, so pure, that it alone endures? Through centuries, theologians and seekers have seen in the stone a foreshadowing of the Messiah, the eternal kingdom inaugurated not by the sword, but by Christ himself. Jesus, who called himself the stone the builders rejected, fulfills Daniel's riddle. His life, death, and resurrection broke the logic of empires, and his return, still awaited, will be the moment every power derived from pride is ended forever. But this prophecy stretches even further. Daniel's later visions, painted in the chilling light of night, pulse with detail about what the future holds. In Daniel 7, the four beasts rise from the sea, searing images that for millennia have confounded and compelled. These are more than symbols of past empires. They chart a cycle, a rhythm of earthly power that refuses to bow, growing more blasphemous and bold as time rolls on. Yet Daniel's gaze is drawn to the ultimate drama. A little horn, arrogant and cunning, arises from this shifting chaos. He shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. Daniel 7:25. Here, prophecy isn't just forecasting politics. It lifts the veil on the perennial conflict between good and evil, a contest not yet finished. Daniel sees a power, charismatic, spiritual, relentless, emerging at the end of history, deceiving multitudes, test-driving the very patience of the faithful. But don't miss the pulse of hope amidst the shadows. The prophecy continues, but the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away, to be consumed and destroyed to the end. Daniel 7:26. Imagine a cosmic courtroom, the Ancient of Days taking his seat, books opened, justice rolling down like thunder. Daniel's trembling hand records not doom, but the moment when evil is finally judged, and the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. Daniel 7:27. This is more than distant apocalypse. It's your world, your story in the making. Every day the world grows more restless, every conflict or new technology hinting at the velocity of prophecy's approach. Daniel's glimpse into the future warns us. There is a spiritual contest that will intensify as humanity races towards the edge of history. Is it possible that in artificial intelligence, global surveillance, or international alliances, we see embryonic shapes of Daniel's final kingdoms? The faster our world spins forward, the more pressing his ancient words become. Let's lean in further. In Daniel 8 and 9, time becomes elastic, stretched by the hand of prophecy. Daniel hears a messenger refer to a time, times, and half a time, and the mysterious 70 weeks that will mark out redemptive history. You might ask, do these cryptic numbers really matter for us today? Astonishingly, historians have traced Daniel's 70 weeks, a calendar of years, pointing from the rebuilding of Jerusalem through centuries of turmoil, right up to the promised Messiah's appearance, and on to a future time when the last covenant is ratified and the world chooses its allegiance once for all. Every prophetic number, every angelic phrase, is a clue planted for those willing to watch and wait. As Daniel reels beneath the revelations, the angel's final words linger like electricity in the air. Go your way, Daniel, for the words are shut up and sealed until the time of the end. Daniel 12:9. This is prophecy as both challenge and comfort. The future must be sought, not seized, discerned, not dominated. This shows us something profound about the direction of history. We do not head blindly toward oblivion, but toward an appointed hour. Daniel's clock still ticks. Every crisis, every revival, every tremor in our world, another signpost, another whisper. The end is not yet, but it draws near. Even when chaos seems to rule, prophecy insists there is a boundary God himself will not allow to be crossed. The stone will fall at precisely the right time. You might feel a shiver. If these prophecies were fulfilled with surgical accuracy in the past, how seriously should we take the possibility that the future events Daniel saw are as close as the breaking dawn? Anxiety and anticipation mingle in the soul. What if you are living in the exact generation meant to see things kings and prophets could only dream of? Daniel's visions are not reason for fear, but for readiness. But there's a paradox at the heart of all this. Many yearn for certainty, for a code to crack so they know when and how. Yet Daniel is told to seal up the words, and Jesus himself said, "Of that day and hour no one knows." Matthew 24:36. Prophecy's purpose isn't to make us timekeepers or code breakers. It is to ignite vigilance, humility, and hope. It invites spiritual clarity, a heightened sense that we are participants on the stage, where eternity will soon break in. The world is full of end-time voices, predictions, and claims. Many build their lives on fear or speculation. But Daniel's example is different. He does not retreat. He does not panic. He prays. He fasts. He serves with integrity, courage, and longing for God's name above all other loyalties. This is the true posture of prophecy, a life awake to the times, anchored by the kingdom that cannot be shaken, immune to the hysteria of every earthly forecast. So where does this leave you? The future will not be tamed by human wisdom or bent by political power, but each of us is called into the posture of Daniel, to discern, to pray, to act with faithfulness in an age of increasing confusion. The stone is still coming. The court will still sit. The kingdom we await is no longer the dream of an exile. It is a living reality, drawing nearer with every sunrise. Prophecy summons us not to withdraw, but to step forward as those who know the true end of the story. But this raises the most urgent question yet. What does it mean to connect personally, spiritually, to the God of Daniel, here and now, as history ripens toward its final act? The next part will uncover how you are called not just to observe prophecy, but to experience the deep, transforming relationship Daniel knew, the lifeblood of faith and courage in any generation. What you discover next may change not just your outlook on the future, but your very heart for today. The journey intensifies. Don't miss what lies ahead. Imagine returning to that dim-lit chamber in Babylon, a room perfumed with incense and heavy with expectation, where Daniel, old yet unbowed, kneels in the deepest hours of night. There's a hush, a trembling, the sense that this secret place, far from any throne, is more crucial to history than the court itself. We've uncovered the sweep of prophecy, seen empires rise and fall, glimpsed shadows of what's yet to come. But now, the story narrows. Prophecy is no longer about distant events or future rulers. It becomes intensely, breathlessly personal. What does it mean to connect soul to soul with the God who gave Daniel his visions? How can these ancient encounters become the pulse of your own life? Many believe that deep spirituality is reserved for saints and prophets, rare, unreachable, a relic of more mystical times. But the profound truth is this: what set Daniel apart was not his intellect, nor his position, nor even the grandeur of his revelations. It was his relentless devotion, a spiritual intimacy forged in isolation, tested in crisis, and crowned in moments of transcendent encounter. The book of Daniel isn't just a record of dreams. It's a manual for becoming a vessel of divine presence in an age obsessed with power and spectacle. You might be wondering, how did Daniel sustain such unwavering connection to God in the heart of Babylon, a city of endless distraction and danger? The answer is at once startlingly simple and impossibly demanding: disciplined prayer, radical honesty, and unbreakable trust. Day after day, year after year, Daniel knelt by an open window facing Jerusalem, his prayer rising like incense above a hostile city. Listen as the ancient text confesses. He knelt on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he had done previously. Daniel 6:10. Imagine feeling the rhythm, the hush of a city outside, the crackle of danger lurking below, but inside, a heartbeat steady as eternity. Dramatic contrast. Many pursue faith only in times of need, dipping briefly into the presence of God. But the profound secret of Daniel's strength was constancy. He met with God when he was favored by kings, and when a den of lions waited in the dark. His relationship was not negotiation, it was surrender. Visualize the vulnerability in this. Daniel, powerful yet fragile, facing the same human fears you know, uncertainty, loss, loneliness, and yet he emerges radiant from the furnace of exile, speaking wisdom that baffles the greatest minds of his age. How? Because Daniel never allowed the noise of Babylon to drown out the whisper of God. His connection was a lifeline. O Daniel, man greatly beloved. Daniel 10:11. Consider that, a heavenly messenger calling you by name, not because of achievement, but because of love born in secret devotion. You might sense a growing longing. Could I know God like this? Could the ancient intimacy of prophets and mystics become the pulse of my ordinary days? The answer is embedded in Daniel's story. Yes. Intimacy with God is kindled in faithful seeking. Even in times when God felt distant, dreams delayed, revelations sealed up, Daniel persisted. He lamented, fasted, confessed not only his own failings, but the brokenness of his people, interceded with tears when others feasted with pride. His spirituality was raw, honest, desperate for God's honor, even if it cost him his comfort or his life. Let's press even deeper. One of the most breathtaking moments comes in Daniel 9, when he prays not for visions, not for rescue, but for forgiveness and restoration. He recites the failures of his nation as if they were his own, refusing to stand apart or above, and pleads, "We do not present our pleas before you because of our righteousness, but because of your great mercy." Daniel 9:18. Can you feel the humility? Many imagine spiritual connection as climbing a ladder of good deeds. Daniel reverses everything. He stands on the promise of mercy. Here's where revelation blooms. In this prayer, offered in ashes, without spectacle, a supernatural answer descends. While I was speaking in prayer, Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, came to me in swift flight. Daniel 9:21. Imagine, in the very act of seeking God with all his heart, Daniel is met with divine visitation. Not because he earned it, but because he hungered and persisted. This shows us something profound. Spiritually deep connection is not a mystical lottery, but the natural outcome of seeking God with honesty, humility, and hunger. God delights to meet souls who lean into him, especially in places of exile or confusion. The light Daniel carried wasn't reserved for a chosen few. It's on offer to all who make space, even in a world roaring with distraction. There's a rhythm here, a pattern you can trace: separation, seeking, revelation. Daniel did not withdraw from the world's ugliness. He brought it to God. He transformed Babylon's threats into opportunities for deeper dependence. This is the secret architecture of spiritual connection, using every challenge not as an excuse for distance, but as a springboard into God's arms. You might be picturing your own modern Babylon: crowded calendars, glowing screens, ceaseless pressures, and divided loyalties. The city may look different, but the fight is the same. Will you drift in the tides of distraction, or anchor your soul in daily meeting with God? Daniel's window, facing a ruined Jerusalem, was not a sign of nostalgia. It was an act of defiant hope, a declaration that God's promises were more real than his circumstances. Let yourself feel the implications. When you pray, when you confess, when you stand alone for what matters, heaven takes notice. The same God who dispatched angels in response to Daniel's prayers is alive to your cries, your longing, your struggles now. Spiritual connection isn't about escaping the world. It's about bringing the reality of God into the world's toughest spaces. Consider the metaphor, Daniel in the lion's den. Many see this as a tale of rescue, but go deeper, see it as a living picture of spiritual connection at its fiercest. Surrounded by claws and darkness, Daniel's spirit stayed anchored beyond terror, resting in the presence that shut every mouth of destruction. Imagine feeling that peace, not as myth, but as living current, surging in the quiet when all seems lost. This is the life Daniel's story dares you to pursue, not a religion of routines, but a relationship as risky, as resilient, as intimate as exile itself. It's a call to build an altar in the heart of Babylon, to build your days around meeting God in prayer, confession, and listening. Through Daniel, we glimpse the one desire that powers every prophecy, for God to dwell with his people, to walk with them through fire and famine, to be their light in a city of shadows. But this deepening connection leads to another question, one even more personal. How do you actually cultivate such intimacy, not just in theory, but in the hard, beautiful, ordinary rhythms of modern life? In the next part, you'll discover practical, step-by-step invitations for growing this kind of unshakable spirit. You'll learn how Daniel's ancient habits can become your own, and how a life built on daily encounter can transform not just your faith, but your entire world. The journey is about to move from vision to action. Don't miss what comes next. What if the ancient power that shaped Daniel's spirit could spark transformation in your own life, starting right now? Many people watch the story of Daniel unfold across blazing palaces and vision-drenched nights and conclude, that kind of faith is beyond me. But the profound truth is that Daniel's extraordinary courage, clarity, and intimacy with God flowed from the steady current of simple, practical habits, habits within reach of anyone. Burning for more. In this part, let's peel back the mysteries and reveal how the tools that forged a prophet can become the scaffolding for spiritual growth in ordinary days, for ordinary people facing extraordinary times. This reveals a dramatic contrast. Many believe spiritual growth happens spontaneously, but Daniel's rhythm exposes the deeper reality. Real intimacy is cultivated with intention. If you crave a living connection, start by making your meeting place with God unbreakable. Set times, set places where distraction falls away and your spirit leans forward. Let's pause for a mini aha. Each small daily act, kneeling in secret, feeding your soul, resisting compromise, opening your wounds, sharing the journey, risking for God's cause, is a brick in an unshakable spiritual life. This shows us something profound. True spiritual growth rises, paradoxically, by sinking roots in discipline, devotion, and daily yeses. The most anointed moment of your life may begin in the most ordinary act of faithfulness. Still, you might wonder, what if I fail? What if my habits crumble under pressure, or if I lose my way? Daniel's story flickers with hope here too. The foundation of his growth was not perfection, but persistence. Every exile, every trial, every night in the den or furnace became a fresh invitation to return, to remember who God is, and to discover who he could be in the crucible of struggle. Imagine then the ripple. Your ordinary yes to God, repeated and renewed, sends shockwaves into realms you cannot see. Angels dispatched, histories rewritten, lives transformed. The book of Daniel insists, small faithful habits can unlock divine encounters, propel you into callings you'd never dreamed, and anchor you in peace as kingdoms rise and fall. As the ancient promise whispers, those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above. Daniel 12:3. Your faithful steps ignite an irreversible, radiant testimony visible before heaven and earth. But this practical path is not the journey's end. It points towards something still more beautiful and challenging. What if your spiritual growth was never meant to stay hidden in the private rooms of devotion? In the next part, you'll see how the habits you forge create ripples far beyond your own life, shaping communities, healing divisions, and sparking revivals greater than Daniel could have imagined. What does it look like when faith becomes a shared fire, a movement? What happens when your spiritual growth becomes a lifeline for others? The answers are both surprising and essential. Don't turn away. The next revelation is about to set your faith ablaze. Pause for a moment and let the silence settle. Imagine Daniel, not as a solitary figure wreathed in prophetic light, but as one voice among a handful of faithful friends, hearts bound not merely by circumstance, but by holy companionship. This is the overlooked thread woven through Daniel's story, the quiet, unstoppable power of community. When the fires of trial blazed hottest and the night in Babylon felt endlessly dark, Daniel was never alone. His faith blossomed not in isolation, but in the rich soil of shared struggle, shared worship, shared hope. Many believe that real spirituality is a private ascent, personal visions, individual breakthroughs, the heroic lone prayer. But the profound truth is this: in God's economy, growth multiplies and miracles ignite when faith is lived, confessed, and tested in community. Daniel's legacy, magnificent as it is inseparable from three relentless companions, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whose courage changed the course of kingdoms and whose loyalty deepened Daniel's own resolve. Let's return to that unforgettable scene. The fiery furnace, glowing a monstrous orange, the oppressive heat licking like a living dragon at the edges of the king's court. "Bow to the idol," Babylon thundered. "Everyone else has." But these three friends, infused with the same spirit, answered with a defiant unity. "We will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." Daniel 3:18. Feel the pulse of their courage, not born of self, but rooted in the certainty that what God births in a group outlasts anything shaped in fear. You might be wondering, does my faith really need others to flourish? Isn't it enough to believe in my heart behind closed doors? The book of Daniel answers with a resounding reversal. Shared faith is no mere emotional comfort. It is a living catalyst. It was together that Daniel and his friends pledged to purity, refusing Babylon's delicacies. Together they fasted for mercy, trembling before a mystery only God could unlock. Together they risked death over compromise and witnessed the miracle of deliverance in blazing fire. This shows us something profound about the spiritual life. Community is God's chosen tool for both survival and revelation. In moments when Daniel himself was disoriented, when the future seemed too terrible or the task too weighty, he turned to his friends. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known and told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery. Daniel 2:17-18. Picture it, the hushed circle, fervent. Prayers climbing together on the midnight wind, transforming their fear into faith. Dramatic contrast. Many experience the loneliness of faith, believing their struggle, their doubts, their hopes are uniquely theirs. But in Daniel's world, isolation is the battlefield of defeat. While in the company of the faithful, questions become sparks, and courage feeds courage, growing into a blaze that even royal decrees cannot suppress. Modern application is everywhere. In a world aching with division, anxiety, and digital distraction, authentic spiritual community is revolutionary. Imagine the ripple. A small group gathering weekly, not merely for rituals, but confessing failures, wrestling with Scripture, interceding for each other's burdens, refusing to let one another slip into compromise or discouragement. It is nothing less than a modern furnace, trials shared, faith refined, and even the fiercest flames kindled into revival. Some might say, "But I've been wounded by community. People fail, groups fracture." Even here, Daniel's story offers healing. Babylon was a city of forced alliances, suspicion, and broken trust. Yet Daniel and his friends built their friendship on worship, prayer, and sacrificial loyalty, not popularity or convenience. Notice the pattern. True spiritual community is not deep because everyone is perfect, but because together the group clings to the only one who is. Let's dig deeper. The miracle of God's deliverance in Daniel's life always unfolded publicly, never just privately. The king and country saw 4 men in the fire, and a 4th, like a son of the gods, walking among them. The impact. The nation was astonished. The king's decree changed. God's reality heralded across empires. Can you imagine? Your acts of shared faith, carried out in unity and courage, can ripple outward, shifting atmospheres and changing histories in ways you may never see. You might now be sensing a question rise within. How do I build that kind of community? The answer starts with a choice as daring as Daniel's, seeking out spiritual friendships, being honest in prayer, showing up even when hope feels thin, and daring to open your heart with humility and longing. Start with just one other person. Share your desire, confess your struggles, set rhythms of prayer and accountability. You're not assembling heroes. You're gathering desperate hearts who expect God to show up. Feel the power of this. When faith is lived, not as solitary endurance but as shared flame, the impossible becomes possible. Daniel faced lions with the memories of friends at his back. His friends faced the furnace with Daniel's prayers carrying them through. The lesson is ancient and unchanging. Divine encounters most often come through the mystery of us, not just me. Consider, too, the living metaphor Jesus gave the church, a body. Many parts, all necessary, all dependent, all shining when even one shines, all limping when one is wounded. Daniel's community points beyond itself, echoing forward to every small group, every prayer huddle, every home where faith is confessed and lived in unity. Imagine how your own faith could multiply, not merely in what you receive, but in what you give. How your testimony, your loyalty, your prayers might be the very hand that keeps someone else standing in their night of trial. Here's a mini aha moment. In God's greatest stories, victory is seldom solo. Every fire-forged conviction, every impossible rescue, every prophecy fulfilled is rooted in shared faith. This is the profound secret. God's dream is not one flaming witness, but a furnace of souls burning together, illuminating Babylon's night as one. But this irresistible truth beckons us further. What could it mean if your life, your spiritual practices, your friendships become the living context in which new stories of faith are birthed, stories of courage, healing, transformation? In the final part, you'll encounter powerful personal testimonies and reflections, tales of modern Daniels and faith communities who have dared to seek God together, and how their shared journeys are still shaping lives today. What if your story is the next to be written? The most surprising revelations are still to come. Prepare to be moved. Pause and take a breath. Let the swirl of history, prophecy, and community settle into the quiet space of your own life. This journey through Daniel's world, his fires, his prayers, his visions, has pointed inevitably here, to the heart, to the mirror, to where the ancient drama collides with your day, your doubts, your dreams. For all its empires and mysteries, the book of Daniel is at its core an invitation to a personal, transformative encounter. A living, breathing declaration that the God who spoke to Daniel longs to move in your story, even now. Many believe that the lives transformed by prophecy and divine encounters belong only to Scripture's pages or to legends of old. But the profound truth is this: Daniel's legacy is alive in every person who dares to trust, to obey, to seek, and to persevere when the world calls it foolish. His story is not a relic, it is a blueprint for hope and breakthrough in the mess and beauty of the present. You might be wondering, can ancient stories really reshape the contours of a modern heart? Can prophecy and prayer change not just politics, but the private landscape of my soul? The answer flickers in countless testimonies. Stories of men, women, even entire communities who, facing their own Babylons, discovered the very same faithfulness, presence, and miraculous strength that Daniel found centuries ago. Imagine a young woman crushed by anxiety in the pressure-cooked corridors of corporate life. She feels exiled in her own city, alone with compromise breathing down her neck. But something stirs, a memory of a childhood story, a window flung open in defiance, a prayer rising above the city noise. She chooses, day by day, to meet God in that secret place, to stand quietly for integrity in a compromised world. Slowly, shockingly, doors open. Unexpected allies emerge. Her faith sparks questions among skeptical colleagues, and she finds a peace in the tension, a peace Daniel would have recognized. Her ordinary choices, softened by prayer, become extraordinary testimonies that ripple through her world. Or consider a group of friends, weary from church hurt and personal disappointments. Desperate for more, they begin to gather in a living room, searching the book of Daniel for meaning. There they confess failures, risk vulnerability, intercede for their city and their own wounded hearts. In time, their circle grows, a mosaic of stories. An addict set free, an anxious student discovering purpose, a cynical skeptic now quick to pray for strangers. What was once exile becomes holy ground. As in Babylon, God is not absent from the broken, he is especially present among the searching. And perhaps maybe you know what it is to stand in a lion's den of bill collectors, medical diagnoses, or silent nights that thunder with fear and self-doubt. Maybe, right now, your Babylon wears the mask of busyness or betrayal. Listen to Daniel's whispered encouragement. It is not the absence of trial, but the presence of God that shapes the story. Daniel did not conjure up courage. He received it one obedient step, one prayer, one confession at a time. In the very moment when the jaws seem widest, the flames highest, divine strength meets trembling humanity. This shows us something profound. God's faithfulness is not a historical artifact. It is a living well, ancient yet ever new, waiting for each person willing to reach in desperation or hope. The victories in Daniel's scroll, shut mouths of lions, fires that do not consume, wisdom that outshines sorcerers, are given not to pedestal the prophet, but to draw all people toward trust. In every age, hearts break with the same questions. Has God forgotten me here? Will this exile last forever? What can my small faith change in such a vast world? The book of Daniel answers over and over, your story matters, your choices echo, your trust tested in secret is seen in heaven and felt on earth. When you live with spiritual courage, you break open impossible futures, not only for yourself, but for those whose eyes are watching, whose faith is flickering, who need to see the God of Daniel alive in 2024, in your city, in your workplace, in your circle of friends. Visualize this truth every time you forgive instead of retaliate, pray instead of panic, stand for the unlovely instead of striving for applause. You walk in Daniel's footsteps. You become a living prophecy, a quiet subversion of a world addicted to self. And history itself will testify, those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Daniel 12:3. Perhaps you feel the longing, the ache. What if my journey still seems small? What if my prayers don't yet seem to shake the earth? In every story, Daniel's, yours and mine, the most potent transformations often begin in silence, in tears, in the deep, undramatic faithfulness no one else sees. That's the place where God's hand draws near, where spiritual inheritance passes from one generation to the next. Let yourself believe. The God who wrote the rise and fall of empires delights to write redemption into forgotten corners, into the fractures and fears we hide. Today, you are invited into that story, not as an observer, but as a participant and witness. The journey of prophecy, prayer, and connection calls for a choice. Will you let God meet you, even in the exile, even in the fire, and write through your life a testimony the world cannot ignore? But there is one last question, an echo as old as Daniel and as urgent as today. What might awaken in your life and in your generation if you dared to live with such faith and to risk becoming the answer to someone else's silent prayer? Your chapter is unwritten, the vision still unfolding. The same God who walked in Babylon still walks with you now. Prophecy is not finished, and neither is your story. Stay open for the next calling, for the Spirit who transforms defeat into dawn. The greatest miracles might be yet to come. Recognize the journey you've taken, from Jerusalem's shattered gates to the dazzling heights of Babylon, through the fires of courage, nights of prayer, and visions that span the rise and fall of empires. You've seen how one young exile, anchored by faith and emboldened by revelation, could reshape the destinies of kings and kingdoms. Every chapter, every moment, every prophecy has been a stepping stone, guiding us from ancient history's dust toward the living heartbeat of God's purposes unfolding in our time. Now we can clearly see that Daniel's story is not a distant legend, but a living pattern, a mirror in which our own lives, hopes, and struggles are vividly reflected. When we bring all these truths together, an unmistakable message emerges. God is not only the Lord of history, but the God who enters exile, who hears quiet prayers, who raises up courage in the most unlikely souls. Daniel's visions were not just for scrolls and scholars. They were meant for you, for a generation caught between the glory and the danger of great transitions. Standing on the mountain of these revelations, we glimpse the breathtaking coherence of Daniel's prophecies. Each empire, each test, each cryptic number and fiery trial was woven by the hands of a God who both transcends and transforms the course of time. You are invited to lift your eyes and see history is not random, nor is your life. The same divine pattern that shaped Babylon's fate can shape your days, your choices, your destiny. Imagine finally seeing the entire divine tapestry, not just threads of power and defeat, but vibrant colors of hope, faith, and the relentless promise that God works all things for His glory and your good. Dare to let this realization sink deeper. The statue of Daniel's vision, gold, silver, bronze, iron, clay, was shattered, not by a new empire, but by a stone cut without hands. In that stone, we see the king whose kingdom is unshakable, whose reign outlasts every human structure and every personal trial. This is the eternal truth, rising from the ashes of every past and the tremors of every future. Christ, the cornerstone alone, transforms what empires cannot. If you listen closely, Daniel's story whispers a challenge into the core of your spiritual being. Will you only admire the courage of the past, or will you claim that courage now, in your city, your family, your private exile? Many settle for mere survival, watching history's waves from a distance, but you're invited to step into the fire, to open your window in prayer, to seek God with the same humility and urgency that unlocked angelic answers and king-shattering miracles. Transformation begins not in the extremities of vision, but in the daily practice of faith, prayer before panic, obedience before compromise, hope before resignation. When you begin to draw near to God as Daniel did, faithful in crisis, relentless in devotion, tender for your generation, expect the ordinary to blaze with the extraordinary. When you confess what must be confessed, fast for what must be revealed, and worship when others bow to lesser gods, you become part of a living prophecy, the answer to prayers written long before your birth. So here are a few steps to step into this journey now. First, set intentional, regular times to meet God. Whether in the early morning in a quiet car or on your lunch break, guard your window of prayer. Next, commit to honest spiritual community. Find or build a circle, even if it's only one other person, who will pray, confess, and dream with you. Like Daniel's friends, don't stand alone. Third, Anchor yourself in Scripture. Let Daniel's prophecies remind you that every word God promises will come to pass, so weigh every fear and desire against the bedrock of the Word. Fourth, draw holy lines. Refuse to compromise where God has called you to stand set apart, even if it means entering the lion's den of people's opinions or pressures. And finally, open your heart to the mystery of God's leading. As you cultivate trust in uncertainty, expect to see His hand, a hand often invisible but always at work, in every turn, trial, and triumph. Let's make this a movement, not a monologue. Share your story. Where has God met you in your own Babylon? How have you experienced His faithfulness when everything felt foreign or hopeless? What lion's den or furnace has become a place of encounter for you? Comment below. Your testimony might be the very spark someone else needs tonight. And if this journey ignited a hunger in you, don't stop here, because we'll continue uncovering the mysteries of prophecy, the shape of God's promises, and how the ancient power unveiled in Daniel is still moving in the world today. Subscribe, come back, and bring others. The next revelation may be the one your heart has been waiting for. The book of Daniel does not end with an exile's sigh, but with a burning promise, sealed, but waiting to burst forth in God's appointed time. But go your way till the end, and you shall rest, and shall stand in your allotted place at the end of the days. Daniel 12:13. Here is the unforgettable final declaration. Let it echo in your soul long after this video fades. Many live as though history belongs to kings and kingdoms, but you're invited to stand with the God who controls the course of nations and transforms hearts more powerfully than any throne. The future is not for the fearful, but for the faithful. Step forward, live as Daniel lived, shine like the stars forever. Silence, let the invitation settle and become your own.